Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim LaPointe with Colden Company, and welcome to our webinar on using Microsoft Teams. This is an update as Microsoft has come out with quite a few enhancements over the last year. So we'll be focusing more on what is new rather than some of the base functionality here. So everyone is in listen-only mode. If you do have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A component of WebEx, and we'll get to the questions at the end of the presentation. Before we get to the meat here, just a little housekeeping, a little bit about us. Colden Company is an information technology service organization, which means we're computer guys and gals. Been in business since 2003 with offices in St. Augustine, Florida, as well as in Ballston Spa, New York. Our customer footprint extends into about 15 states and 3 countries. We have many leading technical certifications. What's pertinent for today is we are a Microsoft partner. We do hold their cloud competency for small and mid-sized business, which is where Teams falls into there. And if you've been on any of our presentations in the past, you'll notice a new bullet point at the bottom here. We are proud to say that we were selected as an MSP 501 award winner. Basically what that means, there's an independent organization, Channel Partners or Channel Futures, that evaluates computer companies, and this is a global competition, I guess. And they pick the top 501 actually around the world. We were happy to be selected to that. And not only that, not only in the top 500, but we actually placed 3rd with their MSP of the Year award for this year. So something we're very proud of. Okay, enough about us. Let's get into our agenda here. So we're going to briefly just touch on what is Microsoft Teams. Hopefully everybody has a base understanding of Microsoft Teams, so we won't spend a lot of time on that. We're going to spend more of our time on the benefits and the improvements that Microsoft has come out with. And we're actually going to do an interface review. So we're going to break from a PowerPoint presentation here. We're actually going to look at the Teams program and actually show you some of this stuff. So we'll get down and dirty a little bit later in the presentation. And of course, we'll take some questions at the end here. So it's important to note that Microsoft had their annual conference recently. They call it Ignite, and Colden Company attends every year. This year it was a virtual conference like every other conference, right? But the Ignite conference was very, very heavily focused on Teams. Microsoft has put a lot of effort into improving Teams. As you can imagine, some of the circumstances with the world played a big part in that. Of course, with COVID-19 and workers being remote, all of a sudden Teams really had a big role to play. And I can say at Colden Company here, a lot of our customers who were not using Teams prior to the pandemic are using it now. It's really a nice tool for keeping things organized, keeping remote workers in touch with each other. So we have definitely seen a much bigger adoption of Teams since the start of the pandemic here. Now, Microsoft just released some statistics of their own that they are now having 115 million daily users on Teams. And that is a 50% rise just in the last 6 months. So Microsoft is seeing much, much heavier adoption in Teams. They are really putting a lot into Teams to compete with Zoom on the conferencing front. And they've really kind of left the slack in the dust in terms of collaboration. Okay, so first of all, what is Microsoft Teams? We'll kind of breeze through this here. At its core, it's a collaboration tool. Its most popular use is still as an instant messenger and chat client, but really it's much, much, much more than that. And we're going to spend our time talking about the much, much more. It is integrated with Microsoft 365, and it is included with almost every subscription. So if you're still buying Microsoft Office as a perpetual license, so if you're buying OEM Office licensing with a computer, or you're buying retail copies of Office, you're not getting the subscription and not getting the benefits of that subscription, which include Microsoft Teams, but other things as well, OneDrive for Business and SharePoint and those types of things as well. So Teams is included for most. There's also a free version of Teams if someone doesn't have a business subscription. you can use Microsoft Teams for free. It doesn't have all the integration that you might have with a business subscription, but there is a free version that's worth noting. Microsoft Teams is available as a program that you can install on your computer. It's also available as a browser. So if you prefer, you can log into the Microsoft site and open Teams in a web browser and get good functionality. And there's also an app that you can download on your phone, and that app can be very handy. It's handy for video sharing. Just the other day, I was trying to describe something to one of my coworkers who was remote, and I said, hang on a second here. So I just fired up my Teams app on my phone, did a video call so that he could I could point my phone, he could see what I was talking about. Handy for that. It's also handy if you have technicians out in the field, as an example. They want to take pictures of equipment, get those pictures back to the office. They can do that with the Teams app. Take the picture on their phone, save it into Teams, and boom, it's immediately uploaded and accessible to the rest of the company. So that's handy as well. So don't sleep on the app. Okay, this is just a visual of what we're going to be looking at later. It's the Teams program that's been downloaded here. We're going to be spending our time on the left-hand side here on the Teams tab, the Calendar tab, and the Calls tab mostly. This is just a screenshot of my personal Teams screen here. I've got some things crossed out to protect some of our projects here. This is what we're going to be talking about here today. Okay, so let's get into some of the benefits here. With Teams, you can create work teams to collaborate on projects. And when I'm talking about collaboration, I'm talking about Microsoft Office Online. So you can have an Excel spreadsheet as an example, or a Word document in Teams, and if you open it with Office Online, more than one person can be modifying that document simultaneously. That was long a competitive advantage for Google Sheets because it was cloud-based, right? And traditionally Excel had been workstation-based, so it wasn't good for collaboration. And that's what the gap that Microsoft has closed by using Microsoft Online in the cloud. It allows for collaboration. We're actually going to show that a little bit later. I'll just bring up a spreadsheet and access it from two different machines here so you can see what I'm talking about. You can have your team set up based on really any way you like. Some companies have their teams set up by departments. They have an accounting team, an HR team, a service team. You can have teams set up based on projects. So this is a project, and I'm going to create a team for that particular project. You can set up teams based on customers. So you'll have all your customers listed, have their own team, and then you can set up different channels for the different projects. So there's a number of ways you can do it. My advice is to plan that out ahead of time so that you know what you're going to do, and also so that Teams doesn't get unruly. By default, Microsoft allows anybody to go in and set up a team. And if you think of it like a shared drive on a server, if anybody can create folders on your shared drive, it can get messy really quickly, and it's the same thing with Teams. So there are ways to control that. There are ways to lock that down so that only certain people in your organization have the ability to create teams to keep things kind of nice and tidy and have certain people responsible. We recommend that. So we don't recommend, just turning on Teams and saying, go at it, folks. We recommend planning that out so things don't get unruly. So we mentioned you can have channels here where you can organize threads for a team. If you have a team dedicated to a customer, you might have a channel for a particular project for that customer. And you'll notice my last bullet point here is bolded. So if you see anything in bold on any of these slides coming up, bold means that it is new. So the last time we did this presentation on Teams, I think, was close to a year ago. Anything that you see here bolded is new since the last time we presented. And one of the things they've added was the ability to have private channels. It used to be that any channels that you created under a team were viewable by anybody who had access to that team. The permission was only granular down to the team, and they've changed that, and now you can create private channels and choose who gets to see those channels, which are, I guess, a subset of the team. So that is a new feature. Okay, on the meeting front, Microsoft has been doing a lot there. You can schedule meetings from inside of Teams, and that will immediately flow to your Outlook calendar. And it's not that the Teams calendar and the Microsoft calendar are syncing back and forth. It's that it's the same calendar on the back end. It's Microsoft Exchange. They're both accessing the same back end calendar. So anytime you're setting up a meeting in Teams, it's immediately going to show on your Outlook calendar. There's also something called a scheduling assistant that helps you view when your colleagues have open time or when they're busy. So I'm actually going to open up a poll question here and ask how many of you today are using the scheduling assistant from within Microsoft Teams. Also, just to note while you're answering that, the scheduling assistant is available in Outlook as well. It's just really easy to find inside of Teams here. Okay, these next few features are bold which means they're new as you're answering our poll question here. There is a pop-out window, so if you have a meeting or a chat, you can actually pop that out of Teams so it's its own window. It used to be that it was just inside of your Teams window and it kind of hogged the real estate space there. So if you wanted to look at something else, some files or anything else inside of your team, it was a little bit inconvenient to toggle back and forth. Now you can pop those windows out and have them as separate windows and kind of multitask a little bit better. Okay, there's background noise removal. That's a feature that is coming soon. The example that Microsoft used at their conference, they had somebody at home that was on a conference and the cleaning lady came in and fired up the vacuum cleaner behind them. And that vacuum cleaner just sucked all the sound out of the meeting. With the background noise removal, it focuses the sound to the noise that's closest to the microphone and kind of drowns out the background noise. It was pretty effective. So that feature is coming soon. It's not yet available. Before I forget, I'll go back to our poll question here. It looks like 2/3 or so of the folks are not using the scheduling assistant. I'll show that later when we get into the hands-on portion because that is pretty handy. Okay, back to our slide here. They have something called Together Mode. If anybody watched any of the NBA playoffs, I'm a big basketball fan here. What they had is virtual fans. So they had everybody appearing on screen that looked like they were sitting in kind of an auditorium or a conference hall next to each other. That was Microsoft Teams Together Mode. And instead of seeing people on a call or a video conference in the traditional cubes or rectangles that you're used to seeing, it puts them all in like an auditorium space where it looks like they're seated together. That's called Together Mode. Just kind of a little gimmicky thing to help people feel more connected. And they've also added the ability to have custom backgrounds or blur your background. So if you don't want people seeing your messy house behind you, you can go ahead and blur the background. And Microsoft has also increased their webinar capabilities. They've had the ability to record calls, but they have added Q&A and polling features as well to make it more competitive with tools like WebEx and GoToMeeting and Zoom. So those are benefits there. One thing to note here is a lot of times people will ask with Teams, hey, how do I get a dial-in number? Because by default, Teams is going to be using your computer audio. And just to note, you can do that, but it does require a different license. So you have to have a special license to be able to get a dial-in number that goes with Teams. Otherwise, it's going to default to using computer audio. Okay, a little bit more here. Microsoft now has a website that lists Teams certified devices. Pretty easy to find. You just Google it, Microsoft Teams certified devices. And they have now a list of phones and headsets and cameras and things that are certified to work with Microsoft Teams. Coming soon, they have something called a Teams display that was just recently announced. It's really going to be much like the Facebook portal, just kind of a simple device. It is integrated with their Cortana, which is kind of their version of Siri. So they're really trying to get into that space of competing with not only the Facebook portal, but also using Cortana to compete with the Amazon Echoes and the Alexas and the Google Home devices as well. And finally, Microsoft has something called Teams Rooms. This is meant for like a conference room where you have a large screen up there. It has great camera focusing settings where you can use your camera to focus where you want it in the room, where the people might be sitting, as an example. And it does Teams casting as well, so you can maybe have a computer with Teams up and automatically cast what's on your screen up, or on your computer up to the big screen. So that is also a separate license, but they do have Teams Rooms, which was not announced in the September conference. That was announced earlier, but it was new since the last time we gave a presentation. Okay, just kind of wrapping up the benefits here before we go into the interface review here. Teams is integrated with Microsoft 365. As we mentioned, when you're setting a meeting in Teams or setting it in Outlook, it's not like they're two separate calendars that are syncing. It's the same thing on the back end. It's Microsoft Exchange. When you're putting files in Teams, it's really storing them in SharePoint on the back end. If you're storing files in OneDrive for Business, it's storing them in SharePoint on the back end. So really the back end is the glue to a lot of the front end features that Microsoft has, and Teams is part of that. And Microsoft is really trying to make Teams the, I guess, forward-facing application for a lot of the business apps. There's also full integration with other Microsoft apps. Planner, we actually spent time talking about Planner on last month's webinar, so if you didn't see that, our presentation was on underutilized features of Microsoft 365, and we talked about Planner and how it integrates with Teams now, so I'm not going to go into that on this month's presentation. There's great integration with Stream, which is kind of their YouTube competitor. And a new app that they've recently come out with is Microsoft Lists. They've got some pre-planned lists out there that you can add into a team, and I'll actually show you a little bit of that as well. One last point, Microsoft Teams has always been known for their security. That was one of the knocks on Zoom as an example. A lot of businesses would not allow Zoom because they had quite a few security holes and they weren't doing end-to-end encryption. It was just announced, I believe, yesterday that Zoom is finally catching up and doing end-to-end encryption. So, but Microsoft Teams has had that all along. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to break from PowerPoint and go into an interface review here. So bear with me while I break out of PowerPoint here. And I'm going to be pulling over another screen here. So this is Microsoft Teams brought up. I'm actually logged in as one of our part-time folks here, just so I don't have all of our Colden Company projects listed here. So I'm not going to spend much time on these top tabs. So the activity tab is just showing you things that pertain to you. If you're following a particular team or a particular channel in a team, any updates to that, it'll ping you up here and say, hey, you've got something new in your activity. If someone tried to call you, it'll let you know that if you've been added to a team. It's just general activity pertaining to your account. So we won't spend a lot of time on that. Won't spend much time on the chat either. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to do a new chat, you can either click this button here next to the filter, which then you'd have to type in who you want to chat with, or you can go to your list of contacts and say, I want to chat with Jim LaPointe here, and immediately pops up. Now, one thing I do recommend is as you get using Teams and your list of contacts starts to expand, we recommend what's called pinning the people that you work with on a regular basis. So here in these three ellipses here, I'm going to click there, and I'm going to pin myself here. And you notice I go right to the top. So the people that you work with most often, you want to pin them so that they're always going to be at the top of your list. Otherwise, it goes by recent activity here. And as you start using Teams, that list can get pretty long. And you want it to be clear the folks that you work with on a day-to-day basis. So you want to pin them and keep them at the top. Okay, so now let's move into the Teams tab here. We'll get into some of the nuts and bolts here. Okay, I mentioned earlier that one of the new features was having a private channel. That is indicated by the lock here. So you'll see, excuse me, you've got a private channel here. That means not everybody in this channel is going to be able to see that. So it's only the people that the owner of that channel has selected to be able to see that. Now in this case, I'm logged in as Alfredo here. He is not the creator of this channel, so he doesn't have an option to add members. I created this channel, so I, as the creator of that, will have the ability to add people there. But you can see Alfredo is a member. He's posted his secret message here. So only he and I are members of this team, and he and I can communicate in this private channel. If you see things in bold here, that means there are things in that channel that have been updated and you haven't seen them yet. So that's a nice way to know. We have a Teams tips and tricks channel where anybody that reads anything on the internet, they can post it in here and keep everybody informed there. There's also a new conversation button. That is new since the last time we talked. It used to be just kind of a white block of space here, and what was happening is people would think they were replying to the message above, but they were really creating a new thread. So now they've made it much more clear. You've got a reply here. So if I want to reply to Alfredo's message, I can clearly do that. If I want to start a new thread, I just click the new conversation button here, and that will start a new conversation. Okay. I also want to talk about saving important messages. So if I go into a channel here, here's our news and interesting, we post lots of things here. There's a million things in here, and over time it can get difficult to find things. So let's say I want to flag this particular post for future reference. I can go up to the ellipsis here and save it. And to retrieve those things that you've saved, just come up to the search bar here, type in /save. There's other ways to do it, by the way. You can click your name and get your saved post that way as well. I just go into /saved, and it's going to show all of the things that I've flagged for follow-up here. So bookmarking posts is a nice feature as well. Going back here, I'm going to show you how to make announcements and also show you one of the new features of posting into multiple channels. So this formatting button here is something that's going to give you a lot more options. So by default, it's going to have a conversation. If I want to make something an announcement, you can see it changes the look and feel of it, gives you a headline. You can restrict who can reply to it. You can change formatting, a lot of things you can do here. It gives you more ability to make your post look different and stand out. But the feature that we really like is over here, post in multiple channels. Previously, if you had an announcement to make, you would have to post that in all the different teams and different channels that you wanted those people to know about your post. Now what you can do is click in here and select the channels. I want this announcement to go to our general channel. I want it to go to our webinar team, whatever you want. You just pick the channels that you want this announcement to go into, and boom, your post gets posted in all of those different places. So that's a nice feature update that was recently released. Okay, I also want to touch on collaboration in the Teams tab, as we mentioned that, and how it's nice to have multiple people collaborating on a spreadsheet. I want to show you that. So I'm going to go into our Project Mercury. For any of you that have been on our past webinars, you're familiar with Project Mercury, our top secret project here that I can't tell you more about because it's top secret. So I'm going to pull up this sheet. It's a list of parts here. We see we've got a bunch of flux capacitors and nuclear fusion caps, and of course you have to have Gorilla Glue. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to a different computer, and I'm going to open the same spreadsheet from a different computer. So bear with me as I'm doing that here. All right, I'm just getting it opened here. All right, so I'm now on a different screen. So you're looking at this from Alfredo's point of view, but I'm going to say I just ordered some more flux capacitors. So now we are up to 1,000. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in here. And you can see it's showing him, Alfredo, that Jim LaPointe is now typing in this field. And what I can see on the other end is I can see that Alfredo's cursor is on this particular block here. So let me just add some things here. And you can see these things have updated. I've gone ahead and updated the flux capacitors from 900 to 1,000. We ordered a few more fusion caps, and they've gone ahead and updated it. So it's telling you Jim LaPointe here is on this field right now. Alfredo's here. And you can have multiple people modifying this Excel sheet at the same time. Also works with Word documents as well, which is pretty nice. Okay, I'm going to close out of that. And I'm going to get down to our calendar tab here, which is the next one down. First thing to point out is you have the ability to choose what you see. Do you want to just see a week? Do you want to see the work week, which takes out Saturdays and Sundays? Do you want to just see the day? So it's really up to you how you want to view your calendar here. But I want to show the scheduling assistant here. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. And I'm going to schedule a meeting, let's say, with Jim here. I'm going to add myself. And now if I click on the scheduling assistant, you can see it's telling Alfredo, hey, Jim is unavailable right now. He's doing a webinar. So it's showing what times are open and what times are not open for me so that he can pick available times to schedule his meeting. So that scheduling assistant is really handy. And it's right here, very obvious on the top. That is nice. So I'm going to discard that, so we're not actually going to schedule a meeting. Okay, but what I am going to do is I'm going to do a meeting here. So I'm going to start a meeting. And Alfredo's going to join. And he's going to invite me. So I'm going to do that here. Say, hey, Jim LaPointe, join my meeting. So I'm going to join. And now you're seeing me. So I apologize, my camera is straight on, but my screens that I'm presenting on are to the right and left of me here. So apologies if I'm looking to the side here. What I want to show is the ability to blur the background, which is a new feature. So what you do is you go into the ellipsis here and apply background effects. So I'm going to do that on my side here so you can actually see what it looks like. And I'll start with blurring the background. I'll apply that. And the background behind me has now become blurred. If you prefer a picture, you can upload your own picture if you want. If you want to be on the beach, go ahead and be on the beach there. You have some stock backgrounds that you can pick from in Teams, which is new and just kind of nice. Okay, they also have the together mode, which you can see here is grayed out. So by default, the cameras are going to be in a gallery. If you have more people, you can do a large gallery for a larger gathering. The together mode, we can't do because you have to have more people. I don't have enough people to do that, but that would show people, as I mentioned before, if you're an NBA fan and you saw the virtual crowd, that's the together mode, and that's how you would do that, is just, this is how you would pick how you want the people to look that are on your web video. Now, one other thing I want to point out is if you have a computer that has a built-in camera, and maybe you have an external camera that's a little bit nicer that you like to use, or maybe you have speakers and you have internal speakers as well on a laptop. Sometimes people find, hey, my speakers aren't working with Teams, or it's using the wrong camera. If you go into your device settings up here at the top, here's where you're going to be able to pick your speakers and pick your camera and decide which of those devices you want to use with Teams. So if you ever have that problem where it's not picking up the device that you want, you're going to go to the ellipses, device settings, and be able to choose that. Okay. One thing you'll notice that's not here is the background noise removal. We mentioned that. It's a nice feature that's coming soon. It is not yet out. We've had people ask, okay, we want to get these new features. Can you update our Teams? And the answer to that is, well, that's really at Microsoft's discretion. Microsoft rolls those things out as they kind of see fit. The exception to that is if you have a large enterprise license, then you get to request those things. But in general, Microsoft is in control of the rollout of these things. Okay, so I'm going to leave this meeting here. And we'll go back to our calls here. So you can just do, you can set up contacts inside of here. You can see, recently used people. You can do a video call. You can do a regular call. Pretty self-explanatory there. And again, I just wanted to re-emphasize that if you want dial-in numbers instead of using computer audio, you can get that, but it is a separate subscription that you have to buy from Microsoft. So if you're looking to have large meetings with that dial-in, reach out to us. We can help you get that subscription. Also, Microsoft is really getting into the VoIP space here where you can actually have Microsoft Teams be your entire phone system. You can buy those Teams certified devices. You have to have a particular subscription for that as well, but you could really have Teams be your phone system. So on the phones, it has the panel display where you can see different things. It would actually have the Microsoft Teams app up in that little display there. So Microsoft does have equipment, as I mentioned. If you just Google Microsoft certified Teams devices, you can see that stuff pretty quickly. One last thing to show here, if I go back to our Teams tab here, I wanted to show you the list integration. So if I go back to our top secret project Mercury here, I have, this is a Microsoft list. So I've added, in this plus sign here, I've told it to add Microsoft lists, and you get to choose what type of list that you want. And in this case, I said I want an asset manager list. So I can put in the different things that I had in a spreadsheet before. I just added them to a Microsoft list here. So it's telling me I've got Gorilla Glue, and I think there's a purchase price here. There's a lot of different things that you can kind of configure whether or not they're available or not, and do that in a list rather than an Excel sheet. So I do recommend checking out Microsoft Lists. It has some good templates for use. Okay, so it's already 11:35 here. What I'm going to do next is go back to our PowerPoint presentation here and wrap up. Okay, if you want to have a successful deployment of Microsoft Teams, we recommend having a project champion, someone that's in charge of the rollout. We recommend starting with a small pilot project that makes sense for your business. And train your team. Make sure anytime we roll out Microsoft Teams, there are several videos that we like that we roll out to folks and say, okay, these are videos to get you familiar with Teams. Give people the ability to be successful. Give them the tools they need. Define your rollout period for your project, and then tweak the rollout organization-wide as applicable here. So we also recommend the more you use some of these features of Microsoft Teams, the more data that you're putting in it, make sure that you've got a backup plan. So, Microsoft's default is you get a certain amount of days of backup, and then your files are deleted permanently. It just takes a hacker or a disgruntled employee to really mess up with your data there. So we recommend third-party backup utilities that give you much more robust data recovery and a much easier way to restore. If anyone's ever tried to restore, using Microsoft, it's not a fun experience. Okay, also, we're big proponents of having a change management plan. If you are rolling out something new to your company, there are ways to be successful at that. And as I mentioned, it's not just turning it on and saying, go to it, folks. This is something called AdCar, which is a change management plan, I guess, that we subscribe to. Make sure folks are aware of the need for why are we going with Microsoft Teams. If they understand that, they'll be more likely to adopt it. Make sure they have a desire to participate, show them what's in it for them. Give them the knowledge, so give them the training videos and make sure that they have a chance to succeed. And that's where ability falls in there as well. Oops. And finally, reinforcement. Make sure they're using the tool. Take away other tools if you have to, so that they're basically forced to dive into using Teams, and they'll have much more success that way. Okay, if you're running your business the same way you were 2 or 3 years ago, you're not staying the same, you're falling behind. That's something we put at the end of all of our webinars here. Technology is changing, and if you want to keep up with it, and keep up with your competition, you've got to be looking to stay current with technology here. Okay, let's take some time for questions. And while we're doing that, I'm going to put my contact information up on the screen here, phone number and email. Please feel free to send any questions my way here. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Okay, I've got a few questions here. Can we do whiteboards within Teams? Yes, so that is something that was announced. They do have a whiteboard feature inside of a meeting. So if you want to pull up kind of a scratch board, you can go ahead and do that. That does not work for folks that are using the phone app for obvious reasons. But anybody that's using the program itself, yes, you can use whiteboards. Okay, second question, how does it work to use Teams as your phone system? So essentially, it's really like any other voice over IP system. So you would port your numbers, once you set it up, you'd have to have the hardware in place, you'd have to have the subscriptions in place, and then what you would do is port your main numbers over to Microsoft. They would become the carrier, and then that number would be applied to your Microsoft account and ring your phone. So it's similar to any other voice over IP transition, just that Microsoft becomes the carrier. Okay. Are messages compliance friendly, meaning are they archived for review and retention? So the chat history, no, and that is an important point. What will get saved are files and things like that. Those things, they do have compliance friendly settings for that, but the chat history, no. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, those are all the questions that came in. I hope this was valuable. There's been a lot of changes in Microsoft Teams since the last time we did a presentation. We'll endeavor to keep everyone updated. And of course, please feel free to reach out to us at any time if we can help you roll out Teams or improve your Teams rollout. Thanks everyone for taking the time. Have a great day. Thank you.